Yesterday afternoon, we had a very interesting chat, and that's why our four friends are here, Ashleighh, Cindy, Myles, and Bernadette. And we just had a meeting, and they were just describing how they all met, because they all, and they'll be telling in a minute, that they come from different places. And I just thought that was fascinating, how you sort of came together as a group. So that's one thing I'd like you to come up here and just tell the audience. And the second thing, each of you gave an example which I thought was really very stimulating, that was completely unexpected for me, of some sort of entrepreneurial activity which was both in your organizations or you knew of, but also then sometimes some of you in your private life are sort of developing whatever you're trying to develop and so on. So do you mind just coming up here for a moment just to stimulate us?
Myles, obviously, well, I say obviously working for the Air Force, it does say on the arm there. But yeah, again, it's one of those outfits where you sit there and go, as an Air Force, can we be innovative? When I first joined joined where I got posted into the position where I am at the moment, it was about a year or so, a year and a half ago, my boss turned around to me and well, actually I turned to my boss and said, what's your vision for innovation within the Air Warfare Center, which is the area organization I'm working in? And he went, Myles, that's why you're here. I'm like, excellent. That's what I like to see, good guidance and strategic guidance from the top. But yeah, so I got thrown into the Innovation Hub in a 1,200 strong part of the Air Force. And we're looking at what we call the 5th generation Air Force. Doesn't mean anything to a lot of people, didn't mean much to me, to be honest, to start off with. But when people talked about that, they actually they linked it to technology, and in particular the Joint Strike Fighter, which we've got coming in the next couple of years. Brand new aircraft, very capable, but there's a large focus in defense on, when you're talking about innovation, you talk about technology. But the more I've gone into this journey, the more I've discovered that it's less to do with that technology. It's obviously a big consideration, but it's more towards tapping the potential of your people and changing the mindsets of the people within your organization. For us, when we look at aircrew, you're operating the soon-to-be obsolete aircraft. You take those aircrew and then you put the pilots and put them in the brand new aircraft. What's kind of concerning is that some of these new pilots sit and go, well, this new aircraft, although it's hugely capable, it's just not the same as the old one. And you're going, well, it's because it's completely polar opposite, but you have to change the way you think and the way you apply your tactics and training in this brand new, different context. So having been thrown in the Innovation Hub, and being given my strategic vision, I was sat there and was like, wow, what on earth does that look like in our organization? And fortunately, I was given some through good old Adelaide contacts, I was given the connection through SA Water, actually, to these fine people. And to be honest, they have really supported me through the journey, and that's what I needed, because there are many times where you're sitting out there on your own, and you're going, I'm not sure if I believe all the stuff that I'm talking about, but I believe I'm heading in the right direction. And that's where I get the reassurance from these guys and some great ideas and support, which is hugely needed. But yeah, I'll pass over to Cindy, and you can talk a bit more about yourself and where you fit in.
So I'm Cindy Fowler, and I'm the Manager of Organisational Development at the Department of Environment and Water. A couple of years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, our corporate plan talked about being an agile and innovative and nimble organisation, and we heard from staff that they were words on a piece of paper, and how do we turn them into a lived experience. And the Chief Executive, she was saying that, everyone has my permission to be innovative, everyone has my permission to fail, experiment, learn quickly, adapt, pivot, flex, all that sort of thing. And yet when I spoke to staff, they said, we don't have permission, it's not safe to fail. And so there's this real paradox between the Chief Executive kind of saying, I'm saying this, but no one's hearing me, and then the staff saying, not hearing it, not seeing it. So ended up, I think I kind of ruminated over this for way too long, probably almost 6-7 months, trying to work out how to fix it, and I did it a lot in my own head because I thought I was supposed to know how to do it, and I didn't. So after about 6 or 7 months of just doing my head in and feeling like I was a failure and didn't know how to do my job, and just kind of being at a loss and wondering whether I should leave my job, I ended up getting about 10 people from across. I kept talking to everyone in the department about it, and about 10 of us got together and created a bit of a think tank, and over 2 or 3 sessions we kind of nailed what was going on for us. There was this impetus to be more innovative, to change what it was we were doing, to be better at what it was we were doing, and to increase our public value. But people felt that there was either a fear of failure, a level of risk aversion that limited the ability to be innovative, or due to a lack of time and space, which equaled workload, there just wasn't the ability to be able to do it. So we identified the things in the culture that we needed to change were that we wanted to give overt permission around being innovative, and we wanted to do that, and we knew it was already happening. We knew it was happening in pockets, it just wasn't happening across the organisation. It was also happening when there were small incremental changes that you could do in your own job, but when it was something that required some help or input from another area, or maybe some more money than what you could do in your own job, then that's where we got stuck. So we said we want overt permission to be innovative, and the second thing is we want to show how it's actually happening and change the narrative that we're not an innovative organisation and change it into one where we see that we are. So that's when I then started to talk to everyone else outside of government that I kind of knew, to talk about how do you do it, because I knew we weren't the first department to try to do this, and that's how I hooked into this network.
Great, the network of 4.
Yes, that's right.
Very large network of 4 people. Tell us why it's good being in that network as well, Ashleighh.
Yep. So Ashleighh, I'm working at the Royal Automobile Association. I've been there for a year now. So I used to work for Flinders University. They had the New Venture Institute at Tonsley. I was in marketing there, so I was there for 4 years and was surrounded by commercialisation, researchers, entrepreneurship, students, collaboration. That was the norm. So I met a lot of people, a lot of mentors, learnt a lot. And then applied for the role of innovation, and you have a little bit of self-doubt in the back of your mind thinking, well, I was marketing and now I'm innovation, so they're looking at me as an expert, but you can do it, but it's not really a role either that had this is how it's being done and this is what you're meant to do. So it was sort of the same thing. It's kind of like, all right, go. And you can feel quite isolated, so even though you talk to people in your organisation, I then had to go, who's doing my role in all the other car clubs, so met with them and felt like that was a bit of a safe space, but we're still kind of that group think of, being an automobile club. So I started even looking on LinkedIn for just other people who had my title, just to want to reach out, and I knew Bernadette from my time at Flinders, and we connected and decided to collaborate on an event. So my role is culture, but also new business opportunities for RAA. So we collaborated on our first mindset event for staff, but also for external, anyone to come along and learn. And that was great. And afterwards we sort of grouped together and just shared our experiences being in this same sort of industry, and said we should form a collective. And the first couple of times we had a bit of a set agenda of what we're going to talk about, and okay, this is going to be the SA Innovation Managers Network, and we'll talk about this, this and this. And now we just catch up, and it's just such a safe space to be authentic and to share what's going on, because innovation's people, really. So even though we're all doing completely different stuff, it's all the same, and we can just so learn from collaborating across different organisations. So I call these guys my friends now, and didn't know them just over a year ago, and it's been great.
Finally, Bernadette, you seem to be a key point.
I think that's the beauty of Adelaide. I think it's our strength that we are small enough to be well connected and large enough to have everything you could want in a city and in our state. So I work for SA Water. I've been there for around 15 years, and I'm an engineer. But within the last year, primarily our business has really taken a focus on innovation, on how we deliver into the future for our customers. We know the world outside of us is changing, and we know, for example, what the customers are experiencing in different avenues is also changing. So we have to do things differently. And as with the others on the panel, we all face that challenge. So I sit here nodding at everything they say because that's the benefit of us being together. We share our experiences and how we're helping our businesses move forward, our people. We've all got incredibly talented people who want to have the opportunity to bring their minds and their ideas forward. How we help create those spaces and opportunities is what we're seeking to do. And to be able to share some of how we're doing it in our organisations and to take ideas from each other and learnings in a safe space is what we find is really, really powerful in our small network.
Just one thing, just before we go into these workshops where we're all going to work, I presume, is you were mentioning yesterday something about a corporal who'd invented something and that quite often we don't really realise what... Just mention that briefly, and a couple of you had some other examples, just so we push that in and then we'll do in this workshop. So just tell us about that person.
Well, and that's what I find quite curious, because I think this came up in the survey as well, where we often look external to our organisations, to consultants largely, and we all have different mixed results of consultancy as well. I'll leave that. But yeah, what we've found is that when you look internally and you spend the time to see what qualities of the personnel you've got inside, it's amazing what potential they actually have. One of ours just recently is a corporal who 15 years in the organisation. Corporal's pretty much second to the bottom of the organisation. Very much a doer, hands-on. But he came across my area about a year or so ago, and random conversation, he put what I thought was a paperweight on my table, and I went, "What's that?" And he said, "Well, this is a microturbine which I created. It's first of type as part of my degree that I was doing, and it's zero emission and can generate up to 1 kilowatts worth of energy." I went, "So what are you doing with it?" And he went, "Well, nothing really. It's a paperweight for my organisation. I'm now working in engineering. I'm meant to be doing this structural analysis." And you're going, "Wait a second. That's a huge capability that we've got here. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. What happens if we take that and turn it into something that defence can actually fully utilise?" And so we challenged him. We turned around and said, "Right, you've got 3 months to take your team and develop a 16 kilowatt version of that. And we want it compact and so that we can use it and deploy it in the field." And he disappeared off and he set up his own business, got some great grants and great support from the local government, as well as funding from ours. And he's now generated this 16 kilowatt, created this 16 kilowatt generator, the size of a loaf of bread. He'll be prototyping and presenting it to us in September of this year. Again, just a great example of we actually have the capabilities within our own organisations. We just got to tap into that individual's passion, and I think that's the key part of it.
And that's great. And also you were saying that the turbine before, or whatever it was that big.
Correct.
This is now that big.
Exactly right.
So that's
a 4-man lift, a 4-person lift, and a huge logistical challenge to get on our aircraft and things like that. Now we can fit them all into the size of a suitcase practically. Incredible.
Did you have an example?
Yes,
I seem to remember you mentioned something.
Yes, it builds on Myles' example that people bring more capabilities than is just in their position that they have in that year, perhaps. So we're a very large energy user, one of the largest in the state, and we've been driving our costs down in terms of energy, and we have a very ambitious goal to have a net zero electricity operating costs by 2020. As part of that, we're looking to install solar panels, and to do that we need to do that to help us operate our equipment, but also to sell power into the grid. And in order to do that, we need a control system. So we had a couple of people looking worldwide for an appropriate control system, but we couldn't find something. So one of those people said, why don't we see if we could create something ourselves, because we have amazing people. So we put a challenge out to the business, a type of internal crowdfunding where we said, if there's people in the business who have a skill set in this area, looking at algorithms, control systems, and an interest and a passion to on top of what they currently do, which talks to what Margie was saying about if the conditions are right. On top of what they do, who would like to be involved in this and to have some space in their time, in their day jobs made, but very limited. If you want to contribute and be part of this, we'd like to work with you. And so now we have a team of 7 people across the organisation who have collaboratively taken that challenge, gone off, created that control system, and it's in testing at the moment. And now we have that in-house capability as we roll out further across the state, which we don't have to go outside for. As conditions change, we can adapt and we can take that further across our business as we become more digital.
That's great. I'm sorry, because I'm looking at time. Can I just sort of slowly move on to the next thing? What we want to try and do is, we're just discussing whether there could be a sort of creative bureaucracy program where I may be a bit involved, sort of as a friend or something like that, and of course others. And just what we'd quite like to work out with you, what would one, should one, could one focus on, and that could be achieved. When is the next intrapreneurs thing next year? In a year that one could report back and say there was actually a shift, something has changed. So I'll just repeat myself. Could you help us create a focus for a program that we could then report back and ideally have a result? Just come up with some ideas. We won't be able to, have everybody's voice at the end, but we will find all the essence of what you said and then have that as some core thing, which will, of course, report back to you. So do you mind being helpers and sort of, I don't know, if one of you host that little group there, you seem to be 8, 9 people, just somehow cluster around a bit. Margie, can you do a group a bit? And Tim, can you do a group? Who else is friendly? Well, someone raise their hand and just sort of gather together a group somewhere. Someone over there, yeah? There you've got it. What projects, thanks for pointing out, what topics or project could be interesting to explore in a creative bureaucracy program? What ideas could we influence, have an impact and tangible results to share this next year? I mean, that's something practical, and that would be really good for us. A result here, but also to report back next year. Ready, steady, go. 20 minutes.
Covert networks work.
Covert network. So this program has got to work on covert networks. Is that what you're saying? Okay, the covert network, right? Got that. I'm just trying to get slogans so we remember them all.
We don't have a solution, but we've got a very clear problem and challenge that we've identified, which is, I guess, the digital first one-stop shop for government services. And the question is, how do we actually build more departments coming on board to get their services provided through it? So we've hit some silo boundary issues.
Okay, so what you're saying is this program should work on making a really effective one-stop shop with more partners than perhaps currently exist. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, that's a clear target. Okay, great. The covert network and that, I've got it in my mind. The next table over... hello, over there.
We talked about sharing and collaborating more across industry. So we've got local government and state government, so working together and sharing what we can share. So breaking down silos. So
what you're basically saying, within completely separate departments, so an equivalent of what this group was yesterday, the water, RAA, etc., you want another version of it. Yes. So there's a covert network linking with that network with a new network over there. Okay, got it. But it's got to exist the next year. That's the key thing. Your table, please.
So we talked a lot about potential IT solutions to improve different ways we can handle IT service desk management stuff. So we were kind of saying that it would be a good idea for us, rather than being the main source of information on the IT service desk, to provide all services to the entire department. Instead, we could potentially train different members of different teams to actually kind of be super users, so that they can actually be the first stop for IT support for the team, rather than them having to escalate it to the service desk every time.
Right, if I've heard that correctly, is you're saying there's an IT place, yeah, that's all there, it's all happening in there. You're saying enable and empower all these other people
Correct.
to be the equivalents of you. So
That's
distributive mechanism.
Especially since many teams use very kind of specialized software and very different kinds of programs. And
So in
systems and stuff.
fact, that sounds achievable, doesn't it?
It does actually, yeah.
But there is a blockage at the moment in relation to that.
Wouldn't say so much a blockage, it's just,
Nobody's thought about it.
that's right. We've kind of thrown the idea in the air before, but nothing's really been pushed around with anything like that yet.
Okay.
It's just a matter of getting the ball rolling.
Right. Okay, thank you. The table behind you, please.
3 words for us: Creative Bureaucrats Anonymous, which is
Oh, another covert
another networking
network.
group. It's essentially a group of people who are addicted to innovation and sharing ideas and experiences about how they're being innovative in their respective fields.
That's interesting, because I'm just thinking, I mean, I know we're joking about the covert network, but it all sort of is a bit like your version there. And also, what I think is so interesting about the messages that are coming out is this festival we're organising is really trying to show people that there are nobody's alone. There's a lot of people. When you look at things from a helicopter point of view, there's a hell of a lot going on, but one just normally doesn't see it. So thank you for that. The table of 3 at the back in the sun, the people in the sun.
I guess we've gone from the opposite, so going from covert to making it, I guess, more open in terms of, I guess, trying to change that culture within an organisation and in the public sector as well, especially where I guess entrepreneurs are also always butting their heads against people who are resistant to creative and innovative changes. So I guess whether a program of work or a toolkit could be developed for departments, best practice guide, whatever it may look like, feel like, to basically consider defining, measuring potential barriers to creativity, talking about measures, enabling creative and collaborative culture, and creating a toolkit, and then whether or not you can then trial it within a couple of organisations with the support of Premier and Cabinet and things like that. So it's a best practice guide. And then obviously, hopefully, it gets picked up by that department and starts running with it, because not all organisations or departments at this stage have those hubs or those innovative areas established. So in that sense, we're behind in the maturity level.
Okay, that's very clear. So you're basically saying a sort of, if we call it guidebook, that may be too fancy, but basically something that someone can pick up and say, look, I vaguely know what we're all on about, but let me just have this to check how I'm going and how to go from A to B to C to D.
Even to measure the maturity level of an organisation in terms of creativity and innovation, solution making.
Okay, right. That's achievable, I think. Yeah, thank you.
So we kind of went down the same path as these guys with going away from the covert and getting more of the traction and more of the visibility. So we think that within our agencies there are a lot of success stories about innovation that just don't see the light of day and aren't celebrated, I guess. So looking at how do we find those, celebrate them, and then create a system where people can get involved. So I really liked SA Water's example of, we've got a problem, let's not go outside, let's find out what we have in our agency. And I guess rethinking about what it is that is going to drive people. Are they motivated by financial rewards and promotions, or is it just can we give them some dedicated time, access to experts in fields? Is it kind of a mentorship type program or aspect to it that allows them to go and take, a couple of hours off each Friday to work as a group, have some access to whether they're internal resources or other departmental resources to try and build and foster that particular idea or project that they want to work on.
Okay, that's very clear, yeah. And some of those elements, I mean, in a sense, you're saying, let's look at the landscape of what's actually going on, because, yeah, I get it.
Yep.
I think I get it.
Real life problems within the agency, but
also just
access.
showing that there's much more there than one thinks, and therefore also stimulates people just to continue. Thanks a lot for that.
So we were also, with whether it's covert or not covert, having some kind of communal platform for sharing ideas. We actually went further and started identifying a possible project. We know the Office for Recreation, Sport and Racing, recreation hasn't had quite as much focus, and the area that I'm in is industry development. So we thought there might be an opportunity for developing the recreational industry, but that would need to be explored further by learning from each other.
Okay, thank you very much, Bettina. So I quite like this spectrum between open and closed, or open and covert.
So we're the graduate table, so we're looking at ways of innovating the graduate program that we have across government. And one of the ways we're looking at doing that is sort of a higher involvement of graduates in decision-making processes, and graduates helping to design the graduate program and being involved in how to construct the program in a way that would sort of maximise our opportunities going forward. We also spoke about that whole individual talents concept, and that we might have talents that may not necessarily be fitting our roles. So we looked at maybe having increased managerial engagement in drawing out those individual talents and seeing how they could be used in other areas of the department as an extension of the role.
Thanks a lot. I mean, that reminds me a bit of the thing in Cindy. You know that session you had earlier today, that school, the primary school thing, which just shifted the thing around as the students being the whatever, we keep on using this word something, but co-designing their own curriculum and so that again, in a sense, seems achievable.
So of the 4 people that were sitting up there before in the network, they didn't necessarily have the skills at first, because maybe it was something new for their department. It wasn't something they were used to. And maybe there's still parts within the public service, even South Australia or Australia or the world, that I still haven't taken those steps yet. So they're still behind, and they could really use that mentoring, that networking, which they've found by themselves, whether it was stalking people on LinkedIn or talking and seeing who they know. So maybe making a more formalized mentor program in that sense, so that those that have already made the steps can share their knowledge and see if they can't develop their colleagues.
Well, I mean, what's interesting about all the contributions, there's a sort of thread running through, at least I think there is. So thank you very much for that. And I think we're now on the final table, and it's Bernadette.
That's the beauty of being at the end. We've been picking up on that thread throughout, and tick, 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 and I thought we might not have anything left to say. So what I'd like to wrap up, which comes back to our first points, the type of city as a commons share economy, the public entrepreneurship as a platform. So we talked about having a portal with tools and resources where we could share our networks, contacts, a model of a position description, which includes innovation and championing of ideas and what that looks like. So being able to share amongst us more broadly of what we have and have been able to share in this short space of time, but to open that out.
Great, thank you very much. I mean, what I feel, I'm just looking, it says time's up here just suddenly, is that a lot of what we're talking about is generating the preconditions to do the work many of you want to do, but doing it more effectively. And I think a lot of this is achievable, actually. because a lot of it could be the equivalent of your network of 4, in a sense, because what people are talking about. Now, that, whatever that is, that shared thing with the toolkit and how to and all of that, one could actually present next year. When is it next year? What date? This is a promise. This is a promise. Let's embarrass Tim. This is a promise, yes? What? Everybody signed up. So I think if you could all give us, I know your writing may sometimes be wonderful and sometimes less so, could you give Tim from each table the note or what you've got, because we want that for tomorrow afternoon for our first meeting, and it just is really helpful, the core messages that you've given. I'm over to Tim.
Okay, all that's left to do is the Chuck Berris routine at the end of this, I think. Look, thank you very much for contributing your thoughts and efforts. I guess the co-contribution that you've made today will help, I guess, drive any program that we design. We would like to keep in touch with you. We've got your emails. You signed up today, so you'll be hearing from us again. Can you please join me in thanking both Charles, Margie, Bernadette, Ashleighh and Myles and Cindy for their contributions today, and